All right, everybody, welcome to the Barndo Channel Podcast. This is episode 1. I am Charlie Downs. This is Cody Holloway. We are with 1845 Barndominiums. We are going to talk today about dirt work. So how does dirt work affect your Barndominium build? The goal of our podcast here, Cody, is to enlighten homeowners or prospective homeowners or customers in the whole process of building a Barndominium or just a custom home in general. And we would like to kind of go step by step through that build process and help where we can. Give them some do's and don'ts, hey, things to avoid, and really things to think about.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of what the episode today is more of, hey, don't forget about these things when you're looking at land or you need to consider the dirt work aspect of your build that a lot of people, especially, I talk to a lot of customers every day and the dirt work is not even in their mind.
Right.
And it's just the excitement of, we're going to build a house, man. We got a floor plan. We know exactly what we want. Like, yeah, but where's your property?
Sure.
And so let's talk about a few things about, location. How is it going to affect your appraisal? Just some things that you need to do when you're looking at property. So let's dig in. And the first topic that we're going to look at is, I kind of titled this one, Are All Lots Created Equal? So I'm on Zillow. I'm on realtor.com and I'm looking at property. Haven't gotten the vehicle yet, taking the family out to look at property. But I'm looking at these things and man, there's like ones in 40,000, ones 10,000. They seem to be the same. Are they all created equal or not?
Well, that's a great question. No, they're definitely not created equal. Usually there's a reason why one is significantly cheaper than the other. You have to do with where it's at, the type of soil that's there, what's around the area. There's a lot of variables why it causes the price to change for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about what topic do we want to go through first? Let's look at, I pull up to a piece of property. I think the first thing we need to look at is just access.
Sure.
Okay, so you got property A, property B. Property A is significantly higher in price.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a reason for that. Okay, so how are you even going to get to that property? What are some things that a homeowner needs to look at? If they're standing at the gate of this property, looking at this lot, what are some questions as far as access?
Sure. So unless you have some experience in doing house pads or drives or all that other part there too, don't make an assumption that feels pretty flat. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of it there too. Accessing it there, how flat your area is to get to it, how the road's going to be, what type of soil is going to be there, where the water's going to flow.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one, the water portion.
Yeah, there's the thing that I like to do is you can look at grass itself. If you're in a grassy area, you can tell the way the water sits, the way the water flows, all these other things just by the way the grass grows, what color it is, what type of grass. So if you have an area that's dead all the time, or it's more weeds, most of the time that's where water sits all the time.
Yeah.
If you have a nice, really pretty grass that it looks very picturesque, normally that means the water flow is a lot better, and it's not sitting there all the time there too.
It's flowing naturally and normally, not sitting and holding and killing the grass.
Yeah, correct. And one thing too that I want to mention, so if you have an area that hasn't been touched in years and years and years, if water flow has naturally been happening for a long time, your dirt has been eroding away. And so you may not have a lot of topsoil there. You may have other items there. You may have 3 or 4 different layers of dirt may be different on different parts of the property, just because of the natural erosion that you're going to have because it hasn't been touched. Yeah.
So when we go to a piece of property and we go do a site visit with a customer, what they are looking at is I call it, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Because you may look at this gate, you may stand at the gate and look at this property and think, man, that is going to be easy to build on.
Yep.
Look at this. It's just a little bit of elevation change here.
Yep.
This thing is going to be a piece of cake. I'm not going to hardly spend a dime on developing this until we strip the topsoil off of it.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what's underneath. When we look at the top, we look at it from a bird's eye view, you think, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. So let's talk about a little bit about the difference in what are we going to find underneath that topsoil, like rocky soil versus clay versus we get a lot of sandy loam here. So what's ideal underneath that topsoil that we want to build on top? What do we want to put a foundation on top of?
It's a mixture. Here in East Texas, again, it's different depending on what part of the country you're from. Even in East Texas, there's a local city called Big Sandy because it's really a lot of sandier soil.
Shout out to Big Sandy. I used to teach there. Thank you very much.
So based on where we're at, we have a really heavy clay concentration. Really, that's why basements aren't a big thing here because it's so unstable. A sandy loam, a good mixture of sand and clean, what's called field dirt, is the key to that. So the plasticity index, the PI, That's how well it holds water.
Yeah.
So that's a big indicator of what the dirt's going to do. So it can be great, beautiful what's there, but once you dig a test hole, what's underneath it, what's been buried.
Exactly.
I mentioned before that I've been to a couple of houses that I've built. I built a church one time where they bought land. It was gorgeous. The house is there. We start excavating, and we realize there's a bunch of dead vegetation there from trees that have been buried.
Dig a hole, bury them. What's the worst that could happen, right?
And so when you have that there too, you think, oh, it's not a big deal. But what's going to happen is the vegetation is going to die and rot and eventually cause the foundation underneath it to fall away.
It's basically going to create holes and gaps, right? As that rots away, where it was once, thick and holding this up, all of a sudden that dies and rots away, and now there's holes there. And what's above that is putting pressure there. And so you're going to have sinkholes and things like that happen. Is that correct?
That is correct. So there's two ways of kind of handling that. One is to have a test ran, an engineer actually design the foundation itself. Not a bad idea. If you have an area that you have somebody you can trust to look at it and do some test holes and stuff, we do that as well. We just make sure that it's good. Making sure your compaction is right, making sure that all that other part to the flow of the water around it, that's very, very important to make sure that the water flows away from your house, not sit in front of it.
So you said something that I want to stop and kind of talk about.
Yeah.
Stop. Elaborate. So select fill.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So a lot of people, we use that word a lot, and we just kind of throw it out there, and homeowners kind of looking at me like, what does that mean? And in my opinion, when I try to explain it, it's almost exactly as it sounds. They have selected the dirt that they want to fill that void.
Think of the word select like a level of car value, like an F-150 is a base, and then you have a Lariat, then you have
a good way to put it.
Ranch. So select literally means it's good dirt.
That's your platinum package.
That's
right there.
It's selected dirt. Because whenever you have a pit, in a lot of cases there too, you have a pit, you actually, when they start digging that out and actually looking at the dirt itself, you can get a vein of dirt that's very clean, select stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what they dig out and take to the location. One thing, so that's a good point of a jumping off point about understanding how many times have you heard, well, I got 20 acres, I got plenty of dirt you can use.
I got all the dirt you want back in the back there. Yeah.
Yeah. So to excavate that dirt, you may have great dirt. To excavate that with a machine, excavate that, put it in a dump truck, move it to the other location, may be significantly more money than the dirt. The dirt itself is not expensive. The hauling of it is what's expensive.
Mobilization fee is what we usually call that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even to expand a little bit more on that, is I've had customers who think, why can't you just take a dozer back there and just push it?
Yeah.
The 300 yards. Well, that doesn't work. Well, it's a quarter mile of the back there, all the dirt you want. Hey, just get your dozer and push it. No, what's going to have to happen is, and everything costs money.
Yep.
It does. Just about every service that you're getting out there, not very much of this is free.
Yeah.
You're going to have them. They're going to have to take dump trucks back there. They're going to have to haul in equipment to put it in the dump trucks and then haul the dump trucks to the front, dump it, go back and forth. And, I have homeowners who get mad about that. Like, why in the world would you have to do that? Well, it's a quarter mile to that, and I can't just push all that with a dozer. It's going to pick up everything. It loses its value.
Well, the assumption is the dirt's the money. Yeah. That's the big misconception. Dirt itself is not costly at all. The cost, what makes money for people that haul dirt for you is the equipment charge, the dozers, more the dump truck. That's your big money. Yeah. It's not the dirt itself.
Well, you think about fuel cost affect you in your car. It's affecting them as well. Everything they're running and operating is off of fuel.
Yeah.
And so that's just cost that you're adding in when you go into a piece of property that we know. And another point there is if we are bringing it in or taking it out.
Yeah.
If we have to dig, I've had plenty that we've had to dig down 6-8 inches, take this dirt out and bring select fill in. Mm-hmm. So pile it up over here on the side. Out of the way. Okay, that's great. Fine. We don't have to haul it off. That's okay. But in a lot of situations, like, no, I don't want this on my property. Well, here we go again. We've got to get dump trucks in. We've got to fill those up. We've got to haul those off. And so there's fees associated with that. That here we are standing at the gate looking at this piece of property, and you have to be able to stop, take a deep breath, and look at this and go, man, it's going to take a lot of dirt.
So as far as cost, so talking about dirt and the excavation part of it itself, there's usually three things that a dirt contractor is going to look at. One is your mobilization fee.
Yep.
What type of machine he has to have, a track hoe, a skid steer, a dozer, a dump truck, all these variable things there too. That's part of the cost. One is moving dirt. So even if you don't buy dirt, say you have plenty of dirt on your land, it costs so much to move it per yard.
It's the same whether we're taking it out or bringing it in.
That's right.
It's just moving the dirt.
That's right. Yeah. Then you have your third cost, which is bringing in dirt itself. So you really have three variables. Now, they're all drastically different for what's there too. The ideal way to do it is if you're just having a mobilization charge or moving stuff around. That can happen. Your the cheapest way is to be able to move dirt around in what we call, or most people do call it, a cut and fill. Mm-hmm. So say you have some areas a little higher, you can just move it around to where you want it to be if the dirt is good. And then the third is moving some out, bringing some in because the dirt's no good, and that's your most costly. But that's the way a dirt contractor looks at it. How many yards am I moving? How much am I bringing in or hauling off? And how much equipment am I needing and how much time it's going to be? Because most of the time they calculate their dozer, skid steer, all this other stuff based on an hourly rate. Yeah. So they're going, I'm going to be here 3 days, this much an hour, and that's how they get their charge.
Exactly. The best words you can hear if you're the homeowner and we're doing a site visit with you, the best thing you can hear is, oh, yeah, that's just seat time.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, because that's usually just a daily rate of a guy getting on a dozer or a skid steer, and like you're saying, cutting and filling.
Yep.
Because the dirt there is really good. That's a really good point about, dirt cost. The dirt does not cost a lot of money.
It does not.
It's moving the dirt that's going to cost you a lot of money. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, we're talking about the cost of dirt. The dirt doesn't cost that much money. It's moving the dirt.
Yep.
So let's transition there into, well, how do we know, or how do you determine how much dirt has to go into the property?
Sure.
So I'm going to kind of keep referencing us back to, I'm standing at the gate. All right, I'm looking at this piece of property. I think this is it. I think this is the one I want to build on. But I have to, as Charlie says, take a deep breath, step back for a minute, and kind of evaluate it from a dirt perspective. I look at it, and most homeowners, you've heard this a million times just like I have, it's pretty flat.
Yeah.
No big deal. I don't think there's much dirt work at all. It looks pretty flat. And probably the most notorious one that I've done is I had one near Nacogdoches. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's flat. And I pulled up out there, and it's probably 20 foot of drop from where the front of the building to the back of the building. And so had to kind of explain to them what that meant, and it was not flat at all. So let's talk about what the process is that we go through, or any other contractor would go through, if they're worth their salt.
Sure.
If any contractor that's worth anything is going to go out and do a site visit. And that's a good tip. If you have a contractor who tells you, it'd be $12,000. Yeah, we'll build your pad for free. Something's up there. You need to do some homework on that one, because if they go out there sight unseen and tell you what the dirt work is, you're probably in for a fun ride with that contractor. So if we go out and we do what we just call a site visit, and so once we get a plan that we really feel comfortable with, we know dimensions. So let's go out, let's do a site visit with these people, and let's talk about what we do. So the first thing that we're going to do really is we just have to walk off or measure the plan out and figure out this is the footprint that we're looking at.
Rough footprint too. Don't think about you have to get it exact. If your house is not rectangle or square and it's kind of goofy, just think about the footprint itself. Overbuild it 5 or 6 feet overall in your dimensions, and then really take some little flags you can get from Lowe's, Home Depot, and just mark it there too. It don't have to be exactly square. You'd like it to be, but the point of it is trying to evaluate where the dirt how it's actually sitting now. How low is it in certain spots, and all these other parts.
Where's the best place?
Right.
Because my wife and I did this. We put those flags out just like you're saying, and immediately looked at it and went, nope, that's not going to work. We need to move it forward because we're hitting that slope now. And so that's kind of what you're talking about, is flag that out, look at it and go, well, maybe we need to move it. What's the best place for us to place the house?
That's right. So it gives you some visualization there. Then you get yourself, not necessarily you buy a transit, have a dirt guy with you there too, or somebody can look at it, and within about 10 or 15 minutes, they actually set the transit and get a base point of where the height.
Okay, hold on. Transit.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we understand what transit is. So the transit is basically a laser level.
Sure.
Right? So explain a little bit about that process of when you're going to see our dirt contractor come out and he brings out this robotic looking laser level. What is he trying to accomplish there, and what is that machine doing?
So once you get your 4 points notated, or 5 points or 6 points, what you're trying to achieve is what the differences are from point A, point B, point C, point D. So you take your highest point, that's your levelest, not levelest, I'm sorry. That's your most even spot there to your highest point. So that's it.
That's zero.
That's
your zero mark right there. Yeah.
So you'll see them pull out this white stick, or a stick there too, that has a guide on it that actually, it goes off whenever it hits the actual laser itself.
Yeah.
So they'll go to one of the outside corners of where the flags are at, and then they'll adjust the level to where it actually goes off again. It tells you what the difference is between spot A and spot B.
Yeah. When I do that with Rob, that's usually what I do with him. He stands at the transit there, and I'm walking, and I'll tell him, okay, and it goes off, and I'll usually look back at him and go, okay, we're 6.5.
Yeah.
Okay, 6.5 feet difference
from
this point to this point. And we usually walk all 4 corners.
Yeah.
or if there's just an obvious dip in the property that we see, like maybe right smack in the middle of this thing, there's a swell or a low spot or something, then we'll measure that.
You want to try to the middle too. If there's an obvious spot there too, don't be ignorant to that. Hit a low spot there.
Yeah.
You're taking an average. So hit your corners, hit an obvious low spot there too, and then you're taking an average of whatever it is going to be from the highest to the lowest. And that's going to tell you with some geometry how many loads of dirt.
Stay in school.
One thing about this too that's very important. It is the most not inaccurate. It's not the right word, but it's the most area that you can have the most fluff as you can because you're bringing in dirt and moving it around. Don't worry about getting it super precise like you would framing a house.
Yeah.
You're trying to get an overall. So you always can have areas you can push around. There's always you actually calculate. Say you need 100 yards of dirt. You actually calculate another 10%, another 15%, just to make sure you have enough when you cover that part too. So it's not something that you're trying to get exact on. It's just to make sure you're covered on that side.
Yeah.
And so if you need to bring it in, move it around, you need to get that good idea on that too. And the biggest part of that is you want to make sure water flows away from your house properly.
Yeah.
It's not sitting. It's not, that will kill your foundation. You'll have issues down the road. I don't care if you're doing a slab, if you're, whatever it may be, you have to get the water away from your house the proper way.
Yeah. And so, you're talking about building on slab. We've been to properties where pier and beam is the only option that you have.
Yep.
Because you have to weigh, that's another thing that you can look at. You have to weigh the cost of dirt versus, okay, well, I'm just going to build it up on pier and beam, which is not cheap.
Yeah.
But in some instances, that may be cheaper. I've been up with Hank a couple of times and look at some of these houses. He's got one that's 8 foot off the ground.
Yep.
He's got another one that he just texted us yesterday, and he went 40 feet deep to put those helical piers in, and then he's going to have to go up another 9 or 10 feet to get above the floodplain.
Sure.
So let's talk about floodplain a little bit. Actually, let's go back on the transit into this. So let's talk about Moser a little bit. So one of the things that we can do is we always go out and we measure, the four corners. I always go out, and the first thing I do to help Rob or Kevin is I go ahead, I look at my plan, I go ahead and measure that out.
Yep.
So we're excited that we're going to be able to kind of partner with Moser, the company Moser.
Yep.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that in coming episodes. But this is an awesome tool that you have that's basically doing all the legwork for us. Tell us a little bit about what Moser does.
So Moser is a Bluetooth technology that actually enables you to have a transit without buying a $1,500 transit.
Yeah.
So you actually were able to go to the different spots, the different corners, the elevations. You can use it for landscaping. You can use it for lots of stuff. For our stuff, we mainly use it to see elevation differences. So you hold it in one area for a few seconds. It'll notify that you reached a point, and it'll tell you what elevation is going to be. And you measure around the build location.
Just walk
around
essentially,
it. And then you every location that's a difference or a corner or a change, you hold it down. And then when you get done, it'll actually calculate how many yards you need. It'll give you a PDF. It'll give you a DWG for your CAD file and show you how many yards you need for that. It's really cool.
That is insane. So it's like AI for dirt work.
It is.
And it's insane because you don't have to be a contractor to own this.
You do not.
I mean, you can go get this and do it for your friends. I mean, you could do your own dirt assessment. And when you are looking for property, this may be the perfect investment for you if you're just particular about where you're building and you've got 5 or 6 different properties. If you get permission to get on that property and you have that Moser tool with you, that can give you a lot of information as far as, I don't need, this is going to cost me a ton of money, or this one's, man, look how level this is. This is actually going to be a better scenario.
Yeah.
So that's a tool that now and into the future that homeowners, and not just contractors, just homeowners themselves, that's maybe something that you want to invest in when you're assessing property and looking at property or things like that. So that's going to be something that's really going to kind of change our world once we get in with them a little bit and start using those Moser tools. That's going to be really cool for us. I'm not going to need Rob or Kevin. I'm going to be able to, hey guys, look, I don't need you to do a site visit. I can go do this by myself. So let's talk a little bit about floodplain, because that is big. I know with Hank, he was telling me on one of his, man, that floodplain was so high they had to go up and get above. There was a set of railroad tracks there that he had to be above because that was the highest recorded floodplain that they had in the area. How does that affect, and how would you find out the floodplain of a piece of property that you're looking at?
So legally, you are not supposed to legally build inside of a floodplain, and so we are.
This is Texas, baby. We'll do what we want.
We are relatively close, 45 miles or 50 miles away from the only natural lake in the state of Texas, which is Caddo Lake. Caddo Lake is obviously a very old lake. It's the only natural one there too. So you have lots of older homes in that area who at one time, there was no code for that, or they didn't follow that what's there too. Now the counties have taken over because FEMA's required that because of all the flooding, where you have to build above whatever flood elevation is going to be. The FEMA map's a great example of that. It doesn't cost you a dime. Even if you're looking at land, type in your address in the FEMA map. It will show you the water flow. If you have any waterways you don't see, it'll kind of give you an idea on that.
You don't think maybe homeowners or landowners would try to deceive potential buyers and say, yeah, we're not in a floodplain. I mean, nowadays that's pretty hard. I would imagine that's pretty hard with the information that's available to you.
Well, it's two things. So banks can help you out because they'll make sure you're not in one. But the property that I own now, so 15 acres of it there too, the guy that was actually marketing it to there was offering to do a housing addition there too. He wanted to cut it up, and he had preliminary drawings done, all that other stuff. Well, when I went to go buy it, I looked at it and I said, they can't build an addition here. This is a floodplain.
A floodplain, yeah.
And so it was an idea. He was trying to make more money on it, make it more valuable, but it wasn't something he could even do. And even when I built the house, when I started to, my bank called me and said, hey, man, part of your house is in the floodplain. I said, it's not. They said, I understand most of your property is not, but show me where you're going to build to make sure it's not in it. And it wasn't a big deal, but yeah, making sure you're there too. And again, it's a free thing, the FEMA.gov, and you can check it out within a few seconds.
Okay. So making sure you're not in a floodplain, looking at the slope of the property a little bit. All right. So let's talk about getting utilities to your property. Again, I'm going to go back to, we're standing at the gate.
Yep.
I may have water directly there at the gate. I may have utilities, electrical right there to the gate. I may not.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at these property A, property B, where is the value in having utilities to your property?
Yeah, the big assumption is how much does the house cost per foot, right? We get that question more than anybody. I've repeated that.
I'd go to bed thinking cost per square foot, price per square foot.
So that's a big variance depending on what your utility is going to be. If you're hundreds or thousands of feet off the road there too, it can be extremely expensive to get utilities to your home, whether it be water, whether it be power, all that other things there too. So even if the property is the most beautiful thing in the world, if it's going to cost you $80,000 just to get utilities to your house there too, it lowers the value to yourself.
And I'll give you an example of that is I'm going to use Kevin. Kevin's does a lot of site visits with me. Yeah. And one of the things that I love that he does is we're always trying to be transparent and honest with people. And it's not about, hey, yeah, I can build it there, but it's just going to cost you a bunch of money and we're going to make a bunch of money off that. That's not really what we're trying to accomplish there for sure. But being able to go to that property and, man, homeowners will tell me our best view is back in the back of that property, man. We've got such a beautiful view. Yeah, but you're 1,500 feet from the road, and now we've got to charge you per foot to do that. One of the things I love about Kevin is he's just blunt with them, like, you're crazy. You know, you need to move this up to the front of the property. Right. And that same thing goes for slope of the property and, placing that house pad or marking that house pad. Be realistic with, I understand that your view may be there, but that view is going to cost you another $100,000 to get that. I mean, we've had an instance where $250,000 because this is what I want. And that's fine, but just understand that there's a cost associated with that. And, there's a trade-off of, again, go back to the property value. There's a trade-off of the only place I could possibly build on this property is 500 feet back here in the back corner. That's the only place. Well, now I have to run utilities to that versus, well, this one's more money, but hey, look, I could build 50 foot off the road right here and my utilities cost me next to nothing to hook up. Yeah.
So that's really important to look at when you're looking at the cost of your home overall. So even if you sit down with Charlie or one of our sales team and go, look, I love it. That's what I want to do. I'm right at my budget, or I've got another 20,000 to spend. And that can be great, or that can be completely thrown out because of what it's going to take to get there too. So don't forget about that part of the infrastructure. Yeah. That's very, very important. And you would hate to spend all that time and effort and you get there and it's like, man, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
There's been a situation before where people have bought land and not prepared for it that I know personally. They go to build there too, and it costs so much to do it, they have to sell the property.
That's right. And I just, that has happened before. I've had that exact same thing when we get into it. And then when we go do the site visit, I have to be the bad guy who tells them like, you realize there's going to be a lot of money involved in this. And that's worst case scenario. But when we do a site visit like that, we're trying to wave the flags and sound the sirens of, hey, this is going to cost a lot of money, and make sure that we get that, assessed and make sure. But there's value in having those utilities there versus I've got to, trench 500 feet, 1,000 feet to go get where I need to get. So when you're looking at that property, please, again, take a step back, take a deep breath. Yeah. Look at that and assess that from a reality standpoint of where you're going to build and what it's going to take to get there. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about were perk test and soil sample. Yep. So I've had a lot of homeowners who wisely have said, I'm not going to buy this piece of property before I can get a perk test or a soil sample. Talk to me a little bit about what a perk test is, because we may have people that are watching or listening that, what in the world is a perk test? What does that mean?
Yeah. So pretty much testing the soil that's there underneath you there too. You can hire a local company that does soil testing. they'll come out and actually bore different holes based on where you're going to build and determine where you're actually going to, what kind of soil is there below it? Is there water below it? Is it great dirt? Is it bad dirt?
Yeah.
So it's just a way to test the dirt below what you're going to do there too, to determine what you need. If you're building a really small home, that's like our McGarvey or one of those like that too, that's not overly complex and not overly heavy for what's there. So it's not going to be as big of a deal. But if you're building a larger home with a big footprint, and you're by a bunch of water, can become a very big deal for what you're under, what the soil is.
And so you're looking at that from a standpoint of, some people want conventional septic, and they're just really, for lack of better terms, they're hell bent on the fact that I'm getting conventional versus the aerobic.
Yeah.
Which do you feel like is more important when you get that perk test? Is it more important for a perk test when you're looking at conventional versus aerobic, or is it pretty much the same? Which one of the where does the perk test hold more value? Should you get one no matter what?
Well, the law is you're supposed to do that either way.
This is Texas, baby. We do what we want.
But no, it actually tells you if you can put a septic in there. So the rule of thumb usually used to be 10 acres or above, you could do a septic system. You're supposed to get that tested now to determine where the water is, what the perk test does, where the water tables are, if it can flow properly, if the dirt can handle sewer on the field lines there too. And if your dirt's bad enough, I had a situation before. I built a house, or a big add-on actually, about 5 years ago. They had 40 acres and they wanted a septic tank. And I said, that's fine. We did that part there too. The septic tank could not handle, it was so much clay, the field lines could not handle the water. And before they had moved in, they had a big rain and it couldn't leach out. Water's coming back up in the sink. In the shower. And they called me in a panic there, and I called my septic guy. He said, well, man, there's too much clay. So we had to get a way to spray it because it couldn't handle what was there. So that's what determines that too. So again, it goes back with what kind of soil you have, and all this other stuff. You have to have at least 10 acres, but you're supposed to check it anyway because it may not be able to handle it.
All right, so let's move on to a different topic. Let's talk about appraisals, and that's a really big part of this because we get a lot of customers who are cash customers, and they're not really worried about the appraisal as much as trying to get a loan. So when you're going to the bank and you're trying to get a loan for new construction, we have a lot that want to roll in the land and the home and everything together. But let's take that out of it. Well, that's another podcast episode.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at what value does that dirt work bring? So I'm going to go back to my scenario. I'm standing at the gate looking at my dream piece of property here, but it dawns on me that I've got to do, man, this may be $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of dirt work.
Yep.
What is the biggest, I think I know the answer you're going to give me, but what's the biggest negative to sitting there saying that? What value is that bringing to your home?
Little to nothing. Unfortunately.
Zero.
It's you can provide some aesthetic to it. It make it look prettier and a few things there too. That is possible, but it's not going to make enough to make a dent in it. I'm talking about 3 or 4% add on, maybe. It's kind of like a pool.
Yeah, in a best case scenario.
Yeah, it's kind of like a swimming pool because that will add some. But if you pay $100,000 for a pool, you're not getting $100,000 value there too. Your home will appreciate. Your pool will appreciate a little bit, but it's kind of like driving a new car off the lot.
Yeah. Well, right now, Tesla, like if you drive a Tesla, they are depreciating like crazy.
Are they?
Right now. But I tell people when they go to do that appraisal, they could care less if you had to bring in $100,000 worth of dirt. They're looking at the house. Mm-hmm. And maybe if you're doing a land house package, they're going to say, okay, well, this piece of property with this house built on it is X amount. And the 2 or 3 appraisals that we've ever had that we kind of question, like, wait a minute, that's kind of undervalued. You know, what in the world? Is usually because there's a ton of dirt work involved in that we look at and go, well, there's no value there. And when you go to sell it, they don't care that you had to do this or that to build it up, but you're trying to recoup your money out of that.
So an appraisal, if you never had one before in Texas anyway, the way they do it is a few different ways. They look at the value of the land by itself, they look at the house, and they look at all your enclosures. So either a porch, garage, carport, heated and cooled area, and then your land. The point of that is there too, the land is what you paid for it or what it's worth compared to one of your neighbors that's sold recently there too. So no matter what you do to it, it's going to be worth that money. Yeah. It's not going to raise. You can move dirt around, build a pond. It's not adding value to it there too. So you actually have a byline on your appraisal that says how much is the land worth, even on your county taxes here locally. It says land value is this, house is this. So you can spend $50,000, $100,000 on your dirt, but it doesn't add value overall.
Yeah. All right. So another thing to look at is, there's dirt work involved. Let's talk about tree removal,
Yeah.
road access, things like that. That again, I'm standing at the gate looking at this, and how am I even going to get on this property?
Right.
I talked to a homeowner probably about an hour ago, and he said, "Man, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it, but it's going to probably take me 2 or 3 months for you to even be able to get on this piece of property because it was so grown up. He's going to have to put a road into where they want to build." And it's just, he said out of his own mouth, "I know it's going to be a lot of money and it's going to take me 2 or 3 months to get it done, but I'll call you whenever we get it done."
Sure.
And a lot of homeowners, again, it becomes almost like sticker shock to them, because when you go out there and tell them, well, this has got to happen, this has got to happen, this has got to happen. Oh, okay. And then you come back and say, well, it's $75,000 to have this thing ready. And it's just the wow factor of, I cannot believe. And that's kind of what we're doing this podcast episode for, is to try to help you understand when you go into this, to be able to look at this realistically and know that there is money involved in this and you need to be prepared for it.
When I first started building barndos and metal homes, I would purposely not put dirt in it because I felt people would, if I gave them a price all in dirt, everything there, and didn't really show how much the dirt was worth there too, if it was a lot of dirt, they would feel like, man, you're really, really high. But in most cases, I would say the house isn't any higher than it would have been, but the excavation and the all the dirt there is a lot more expensive there too. So we try to do the extra step and have on-site meetings with you. We actually walk through and flag it off and tell you good or bad idea. We actually we have Google Earth. We show, we have a separate dirt bid for the entire build, just so you understand where it's going to there too. So you don't feel like we're trying to overcharge for that. We were very clear on that, just because we want you to understand it can be a lot more expensive than people realize.
Yeah, and that's another. We're going to have an episode on choosing the right contractor.
Yeah,
but that's going to be something that we discuss. There is the transparency of that.
Yep.
I've had too many people come in and tell me, well, so and so they said they could do my work for $5,000. Like, in what world are they going to be able to bring that much dirt in and even get their equipment there for 2 or 3 days for $5,000? And it's just something that you have to be aware of. And just, again, the understanding that we have no problem doing it.
Sure.
I mean, it can be done, whether us or anybody else, but it is going to cost money, and it's not really going to add a lot of value to your property overall. Last thing I want to talk about, and you touched on it a little bit beforehand, was just erosion control and water management, whether that be, we go to properties where we've got to manipulate the property to keep water running away, maybe a retaining wall or something like that. How do we, when you go to a property, how do you assess whether or not they're going to need, I'm just going to use a retaining wall. What would make you walk out there and immediately say, oh my gosh, okay, hold on, time out. We're going to need a retaining wall or something here for the water? Yeah,
so we do a few things. We have a local, a couple of guys that are engineers that do civil engineering that I've known for a long time. And I've known one of them. I graduated one of them. And you can tell by the gray hair.
That is a long
back
time
in the 1800s.
Ago. I'm older than you though. So
yeah. But if it's an area that I'm not completely clear on, because the amount of fall, if there's if it's by a community lake, if it's by a lake on that side there too, we'll bring out a professional. It's not overly expensive to do that. That's a big misconception. Why wouldn't you actually want a professional that's licensed, like we have in house, our engineering, that's a whole nother podcast about why we build what we build there too. And I have licensed engineers that help me design this stuff. Why wouldn't you want to make sure it's right?
Why would you not take advantage of that?
Yeah. So we have a couple of packages even we offer that we have Crafton and Cox engineering go out and they actually look at it. They can provide it for minimal cost and give you a good plan on, hey, this is a great location. This is X, Y, Z. And you need a retaining wall here. You don't need this here too. So some of it's based on kind of based on years of experience.
Yeah.
Which is okay. But if it's something that I'm not overly comfortable with, that's going to be above 3 or 4 feet, or something I don't like, I'm bringing in a professional to go. I can sleep at night knowing that I did a good job to make sure it's done.
And sometimes homeowners may look at that and go, "Do you really know what you're talking about?" And the answer to that is yes, I really do. That's why I'm calling him in here, is because I see that this is not going to be good, and this is maybe over our head a little bit. I mean, that sounds like a derogatory term when you're saying, well, this is a little over our head, but it's just, again, to be able to sleep at night. We're going to warranty this foundation, this home. We don't want you to have to worry about this 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. We don't want you calling us going, hey, my foundation is falling in and got all these problems. There's no support underneath it. That's why we do that, and that's why we take those steps.
Yeah, I don't know how many hundreds of buildings that I've built from steel for the last 20 odd years. I still have an engineer that works with us that still makes sure that I'm not seeing things the wrong way, that still makes sure it's right there too. Just not because I'm probably right most of the time. I mean, it's not a knock there too.
I'm probably right. Don't worry.
But I mean, there's not many cases where he goes, Cody, I wouldn't do that there
Yeah.
too. But why wouldn't you make sure it's right there
Exactly.
too? The safety of your home. This is most likely your largest investment you're ever going to spend. Most likely. So why wouldn't you want to take that extra effort there too? And that's why a lot of cases we told people, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like, man, we're not the builder for you. I'm not going to take the liability on that side there too, just because it makes me really nervous to what the end product is going to be.
Yeah, we're not pinching pennies on your foundation.
We're not.
That's for sure. And if that's you, then we're happy to tell you that we're probably not the builder for you, and that's fine, and that's okay. No harm, no foul. All right, so let's kind of wrap up here a little bit with episode 1. So what we've tried to relay here are just some things. I'm gonna go back to my vision of homeowner is standing at these properties, and hopefully we've given an understanding of what to look for realistically. You know, what'd you say? Temper your expectations a little bit, where you're looking at it, man, this is it. Okay, I get that. It's beautiful. But make sure you're taking a look at utilities, floodplain, looking at how level this property is, a realistic look at how level this property is, because you can't always judge a book by a cover. And one thing that we didn't really touch on was utilize those around you. If you can get in touch with those neighbors and talk with those neighbors, if there's a new construction somewhere near, talk to your real estate agents. Do your homework on those properties. Yes, it may take you a couple of extra days, and I know a lot of people are like, I got to buy it right now or it's going to be gone. Well, maybe that's okay too. But you're making a huge investment in your dream home and your future home that you hope you never, ever have to move out of. This is it. I want to build this home. Why not take a little bit of extra time and make sure that everything's done right and you're not fooled by anything? So what I really wanted to accomplish out of this is, if I've got a homeowner that's looking at 2 separate pieces of property and they're just vastly different in their value, values not, and what they're asking for those pieces of property. Maybe there is value in that more expensive piece of property versus the less expensive, because there's utilities there. I mean, it's ready to build. Everything's ready to go. Access is there. So make sure, last piece of advice is, when you're looking at these pieces of property, do not be fooled by what's on the top layer of what you see. You have to get boots on the ground, call in a contractor like us or professionals who can give you a realistic look of what it's going to take to actually build the foundation for that house. The house is one thing, but the land is a whole nother animal that you have to tackle before we can get into actually placing that barndominium on that piece of property. So we hope that this has helped. We hope that these are things that future homeowners, future customers of ours can take into consideration when they're looking for property and things like that. Hopefully we're going to move on from here and talk a little bit in other episodes about, okay, I found the perfect piece of property. I've taken your advice. I've gotten this. Okay, now let's talk floor plan. Now let's talk design. So again, our podcast is focused on helping you, the homeowner, you, the customer, whether it's barndominium or really just a custom build in general, about tips and things to avoid and things to look for in your build. So hopefully we've been able to help you a little bit. We'll see you again next time on the Barndo Channel Podcast. I'm Charlie Downs. This is Cody Holloway. That's it for episode 1.